All right. Well, NASCAR was at Las Vegas this week. Um, Interesting. So now we see a mile and a half track, right? So we've been to pretty much everything that NASCAR has to offer. Michael McDowell gets the pole there. Um, Shocked or not? Yeah, I was. That's exactly my thoughts on it. He's a great qualifier, but man, did he fall back fast? Like it was that was it. That's all he had. Yeah, I think he's going to be doing a little bit better in the in that Spire Motorsports. What is he, 71? But he's always been good at qualifying, especially at super speedways and whatnot. But then it's during the race, he just doesn't have what it takes to run up front very often. So unfortunate for him, but good to get a pole. Um, we saw in that race quite a bit of mistakes, like a lot more mistakes than you usually see. Wouldn't I mean, did you notice the same thing? Yeah, isn't that an issue? Yeah, that's a good question. I don't really know. It's got to be it not going on right. They were trying to talk about that in on the broadcast, right? That like they were having problems with getting it lined up or getting it set in all the way to hit that pin, and it's I mean that's got to be something like that.
Things like that. Um, but I didn't get a good view of anybody either, or else some of the drivers whose wheels fell off, like SVG had repeating problems. I don't know if that was a wheel issue or if, he was hitting the wall over and over again.
Yeah, or if you had something damaged, but you would think if it goes on, yeah, I mean, I don't know, threads damaged, or I don't know. It's really hard to say. And you're right. Like when they happened, NASCAR didn't have, or I should say NBC, or what was it on Fox Sports
It was
One,
on
FS1.
Fox, yeah.
Yeah, so Fox didn't have like good. They didn't have good views of it. So it's like I
Oh,
couldn't
did you
tell
think
you.
the same thing?
Yeah, I couldn't tell you
Yeah.
exactly what happened. I don't know. But even if we did see him fall off, it's like, well, what are we going to derive from that? I really don't know. One thing I do know is that that's not something that the teams want. At least at this point, they have lowered the penalty, right? Like, remember when they first started this one lug nut deal, and they were like, crew chief gets, X amount of suspension, the tire changer is all kinds of stuff, right? Fined, and now it's just like they go down to the pit and it's a hold for 2 laps. Okay, I mean that's better than multiple weeks, but still a little excessive. Like they obviously don't want the tires to fall off, you know.
Right. You're right. Um, yeah, it's a big issue, and I'm not again, I'm not understanding why the single lug nut issue hasn't been addressed for NASCAR. Maybe maybe these guns aren't up for the task. I don't know. It's a
Yeah,
huge problem.
well, if you saw the broadcast, you saw this little diagram they have, and there's like 18 little pins that they can set these things in, but
Uh-huh.
they can still not hit that pin, and then there's like a retractable cotter pin sort of thing that holds it, and there's a lot to it. Like it's like, can we just go back to 5 lug nuts, man? And you got to get three tight. I mean, this is just weird. But I will say that it's something that they will get figured out because you don't really see that problem in Formula and Indy where they use this one lug nut deal. So I think maybe it's a design issue or something that they need to work on, figure out from other series. Hey, how can we make this better? What is the design issue here that's making this happen? But it wasn't just the tires falling off. I mean, it was like speeding on pit row, sliding through your box. Ty Gibbs pitted backwards because he slid through.
Oh, yep.
Chase Elliott gets caught twice for speeding. A couple other guys got caught too, and it was like, man, what's going on here? Like, there was just a lot of drivers not on their A games for some
I
reason.
saw I saw a few pit maneuvers as well. Some cars backwards in the pit stall, so it doesn't get any worse than that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think Ty Gibbs was one of them. I don't know exactly how he got there, but still funny because the guys are like, "What do we do?" And he's sitting there like, "Just change the tires, man. I'm not moving
Yeah.
at this point, Like, what do you want me to
Did
do?"
you hear the radio mission? Come on, guys, let's go.
Yeah, he's like, "Come on, guys. I mean, what do you want to do? I mean, you want me to pull it around? Like, just go, man."
Yeah.
So it was kind of funny. It was kind of interesting. But it's just like, man, what happened out here? Like, what happened to the talent pool here?
I mean, they were sleeping that day. Maybe
Yeah,
starting to let the guard down.
You think they were a little tired from the drive out west, or what? I don't know.
tired of getting beat by Bell every week.
Yeah. Well, that's too bad. Bell tried to do that four-peat, which hadn't been done since the 80s, but did not get that done. He had a rough day too, didn't he? I mean, it was not that good for him.
Some ups and downs it seemed, but yeah, he seemed way off pace. I think they said they even lifted up the hood and made even more adjustments to the car after the race started. So I think they pulled it off the truck and it was already off.
Yeah, something was wrong about that car for sure, and they just couldn't quite get it right all weekend. And with limited practice and stuff, you kind of expect that. You know what I mean? It's hard to it's hard if you're way off to get it corrected in the limited amount of time that you have. So too bad for him, but I mean, it's still solidly in the playoffs. Like he's gonna start top 5 in the playoffs, so he's not worried about much right now.
No way.
So I think let's see, SVG is kind of our keep an eye on guy. He had a bad day as well. Now this is the first real like mile and a half track, and this is where we're gonna really have to see, can SVG compete? And on Sunday he didn't. I mean, this is the type of racing that NASCAR does a lot. These mile and a half tracks they do a lot of. And he didn't have a great day. Now I will say, he hit the wall. I'm not sure if he cut a tire or just got loose and lost it. Not really sure, but he hit that wall, and then after that, it seemed that he had body damage, cut another tire, and it just kind of the issues just kept compounding. You know what I mean? And I don't know if they just didn't fix the car right the first time, like cut the body panels off or do something to keep that tire from cutting on the right front. Not really sure. You're not on the team, so you don't really know. But it just too bad. They just looked pretty far off.
Yeah, the SVG was one of those guys that I'd always see that was in trouble, but I never got a good view during the broadcast. So, I'd really like to ride on board and see what he was seeing there. Um, yeah, he kept having those tire issues, and yeah, SVG is also one that one of my favorites. So I'm always following what he's got to do, but it's good to compare him to his Trackhouse teammates.
Yeah.
Chastain and Suarez were absolutely flying at Vegas, and they're in the same equipment apparently as SVG. So yeah, it's hard to get a read on how he was because of this tire issue, this this problem, these cascading effects keep happening. So
yeah, it was
kind of hard.
It's exactly it. Like it's just he had that issue, and if he hadn't hit the wall so hard, then could we have seen? But he wasn't competitive, I should say, before that. And it's not a knock on him at all. That's what I'm trying to get at here with this whole SVG experiment is, everybody thinks, oh, they just turn left, it's easy. It's not. And SVG is a great driver, but you can see, okay, he's in the same equipment as the one in the 99. They both finished top 5, lightning speed, and he's not. And it's like, okay, you same team, same equipment, same basic setup, and basically he's not able to do that. And that just speaks to experience in this style of racing. It has nothing to do with raw talent. It has nothing to do with whether he's good or not. It's just a matter of they've been doing this for years and he hasn't. And so it's a learning curve. He's gonna have to spend some time and learn these mile and a half tracks.
Yeah, it's going to take some time. I mean, a lot of these drivers have been doing it since they were kids. So
Yeah.
for someone to come in and just hop in and think you're going to compete, it's a huge undertaking, I bet, and you're really just thrown to the wolves, as they say. Um, yeah, but Chastain and Suarez have also had a lot of time in the next gen car, and you know, it doesn't seem like it's the easiest car to drive in Cup racing. Um, so they also have that going for them too, just time in the Cup car itself.
Yeah, and well, I mean, look at it this way to kind of expound on your point there. Look at Jimmy Johnson coming back and trying to drive this next gen car. Now this year at
Right.
Daytona, I think he finished like fourth, so that's great. But that's drafting. You know what? It doesn't doesn't count in my mind. But you look at last year when he was trying to run a few races for Legacy, trying to get that team kind of boosted and get him a little bit of money. He did terribly. And that's a 7-time champion, but you put him in this car and it's totally different. So even though the 1 in 99, they have more experience in this car, or on that track, it really is the car also. And so those two things combined, it's like it's going to take a little while. Now, one thing I know about SVG is he's good, and he's a good student too. Like, he picked up the Xfinity cars a couple years ago really fast. So I would expect that we will see him mid-season kind of put it all together, so to speak. You know what I mean? But he's going to have to race these a few more times.
Yeah, he's going to need some time. He's basically doing back-to-back rookie seasons because to me, the Xfinity car and the Cup car are basically nothing alike
Yeah,
as
totally
far as
different.
technology and drive. So,
Yeah,
um,
so we'll see. But I mean, Trackhouse is doing great in general. And when you go to the road courses and things like that, you're going to see them just do fantastic, especially with SVG. But, again, he's, I don't want to say he's bringing them down, but at this particular type of racing, it's going to be difficult. Team's going to have to carry him a little bit. They're going to have to give him some pointers, tell him what to do, help him along.
yeah, absolutely. And I think we said this last week. I think SVG is there to win a road a road course.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
that's what they expect out of him. I assume.
And he's
He's
got
got
plenty of chances. They're
yeah.
doing 6 or 7 races this year, so he's got plenty of chances. He's going to be fine. I really thought Suarez was going to punch his ticket. He was
Oh, I
fast.
know.
He was
Yeah.
really fast. But you can't be mad with the results. Josh Berry gets the win for Wood Brothers. That's 2 years in a row now that Wood Brothers will be in the playoffs. With that 21 car last year, it was John Hunter Nemechek in that car, who's obviously not in there anymore. But a little bit more competitiveness out of them these last couple of years, I would say.
Yeah, it's great to see the 21 go to victory lane for sure. It's their shop's actually not far from where I live, so it's almost the hometown team for me as well. So I love to see them win. And I think it was Harrison Burton in the car last year.
Was it Harrison Burton? That was
It
John
was
Hunter
Harrison Burton.
Nemechek.
No, it's Harrison Burton.
All right, all right,
Yeah, he won at Daytona.
that's right.
Uh,
You're right. Yeah, it
yeah,
was a Daytona win.
yeah. I love
Um.
the Burtons. So I know that, I guess.
Okay. All right. Um. That reminds me, a couple years ago, Jeff Burton, his daddy. Uh, I was sitting out. I think it was a practice session at Coda. I think it was 2 years ago. Last 2 years ago, maybe. I'm
Right?
sitting out there in a practice session for Cup, on Saturday, just kind of watching, and I look over to my right, and Jeff Burton's sitting there.
No way.
Yeah, he was sitting there spotting that corner. He's sitting up in the grandstands with us, and he was spotting that
Whoa.
corner. And I was like, hey, cool. And but I'm not one of those guys, dude. I don't like idolize people like that. So like, people are coming up to him and getting an autograph and whatnot, being very cool, very chill. Like, nobody was like hounding him or cornering him, or you know what I mean. He didn't need security or anything like that. But I was like, I'm just gonna leave him alone, man. He's working with his son, trying to get him, ready for Sunday. Like, not the time. So
Right.
but yeah, it was just kind of cool to have him sitting up there, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, hey, what's up, bud? He's
That's
small.
so
He's
neat.
short, man. Like, I guess most drivers are, right? Because they want as little
Yeah.
weight as possible in the car, so that's a prerequisite. Unless you're like Michael McDowell or Michael Waltrip or something like that.
Right.
Carson Hosenvar's super tall too, isn't he?
Oh yeah, he is.
Yeah.
He's
So, but
very
yeah,
tall.
it was kind of cool. But I will say this though, like, everybody likes to see the Wood brothers, and it's very nostalgic. It's the only team that has been around since the inception of NASCAR, which is really cool. And not to be a downer or anything, but we all do realize that they are basically just a secondary Penske team at this point, right? I mean, they get their
Oh
cars
yeah.
from Penske. Penske builds them. They just buy them, So it's they I guess you can look for them to go kind of hand in hand. They'll be competitive when Penske is competitive because they share information, they share vehicles, they're all built by them. But I was saying a couple weeks ago too, Josh Berry is a great driver. He did really good in the late models. He did really good with junior. I mean, coming up with junior motorsports in the late models and Xfinity and whatnot. And like he's a good driver. So this doesn't really shock me that Josh Berry gets a win with Wood Brothers is kind of like a whoa, that's an eyebrow raiser. But at the same time, it's like, nah, I'm just not shocked.
No, me neither. And I think he was underrated for sure. And his time with in Chase Elliott's car, I think last year he did a phenomenal job. So he deserves it all, and he's good enough to win. So congrats to him. Love to see the 21 win. I'll say it again. That was a great win. It's going to be very popular.
Yeah, I really when I was looking at preseason stuff and seeing who was signing who with that whole Stuart Haas thing,
Yeah.
um, I really thought it was crazy in my mind that JGR put Chase Briscoe in the 19th instead of Josh Berry. That's what I wanted to see. Like put
Ooh.
Josh Berry in some elite equipment like that, and let's just see. You know what I mean?
Right.
But listen, if he get he's going to be in the playoffs, right? We'll see what he can do, and you never know. Seats get open, you know what I mean? But if he does well, he's going to be in the 21 next year, and he could probably stay there until a better ride opens up because he is that good.
Right. Yeah, and well, to me, the 21 looked like any other Penske car out there as far as speed goes.
Yeah,
Um,
it did.
right up there with the rest of them. And I know Blaney had a fast car. Logano led some laps. So the Penske cars are always ready to win, and it's
Yeah.
only good for the Wood brothers that they work so closely. I'm here for it. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, there. I don't think there's been a race this year that we haven't been talking about the 12 and 22. You know what I mean? And they're just
Right.
very competitive. Now the two car Boston Cindric is kind of hit and miss. You know what I mean? Like competitive, but not on the same level as the 12 and 22. Those guys are ready to just go out and win championships. So,
Yeah.
they're going to be competitive all day. I did also think it was interesting in the race that, Suarez gets second and Priest gets third for RFK. It's just, when I look at it, I'm taking my notes. All right, write that down, and I'm like, hey, those are three guys that don't finish in the top three. You know what I mean? Like those are not podium guys. It was just odd, but it was. I mean, good for them.
Yeah, it's so great to see Priest finishing well. He's made the changeover from Stuart Haas as well, and I didn't want to see. It was really sad to me, at least, when that team fell through and all these drivers had to go scramble somewhere else. But worked out great for Priest on this new team with Kozlowski.
Yeah,
I'm really happy to see him in the 60 car. Um, Daniel Suarez needed a good finish. I think there's been some rumors that maybe this year is the year he's driving for his ride,
yeah,
and
yeah.
he needs some good finishes like this to keep going.
And I would say that that's spot on. Now they're not going to publicize that, right? They're not going to be like, yeah, he's racing for his ride because they don't want to you put that kind of pressure on a driver and they're going to make mistakes. So we don't want them to make mistakes, right? And that if you keep him positive in all these road courses, he could maybe get it done at one of those, So I just don't think you announce that, but I think it is reality. Trackhouse wants to be competitive, and there's a lot of times where he's not very competitive. But it's early in the season. We'll see how he does. I mean, this was obviously a great showing. He wanted to get the win and lock it in. I get that. Um, as far as Priest goes in that new RFK 60 car, great finish for him. I like I've said before. This RFK team is turning it around. They give them a year or two, they're going to be really competitive again. But I'll say it again. I think that Keselowski needs to take the role of like Jeff Gordon at Hendrick right now. I don't think he's the best driver, I think his time is past. This new car is not for him. Whatever you want to call it. He consistently finishes lower than the other drivers on the team. And that to me says, okay, we need to get a more competitive driver in the seat so that he can bring more to the table, share more information, have better, just stuff. And Keselowski can still be there and share all of his knowledge, I just think
Yeah.
that's going to be better for them. But I like the direction it's going.
Yeah, it's yeah. I agree about Keselowski. It'd be nice to, shuffle out so we can get some newer guys in here again. And I follow RFK on social media and, TikTok, things like that. They're always posting it's really cool content, upgrading their shop. They're putting in new pads for the cars to sit on in the garage. All kinds of technology they are bringing into the shop.
Yeah.
I think if any of y'all listen to that Greg Biffle interview with Dale Jr. Greg Biffle talked about his time at Roush and how they were, lagging behind the times,
Yeah.
and
And
they
it's
didn't
been
have the
that way ever
technology.
since. I don't
Yeah,
think it changed since when Keselowski came in, he recognized it, started changing it. But from the time Biffle was there to the time Keselowski got there, like I think that was the same thing. It was just old school tactics, not up with the times.
right, right. Yeah, Keselowski can bring him to the future, and
Yeah,
he has been, at least that whole team putting in the technology needed to win these races.
yeah, I think he's going to be a great owner.
The
But
investment.
get out of the seat. Just my take. Um,
It could work.
what else
I
happened?
see what you mean.
What's his face? Justin Allgaier got himself a win in Xfinity. That's my boy over there. I love him. Well, I like Junior Motorsports. You know what I mean.
Oh yeah.
I'd love to see them in Cup full time. But Allgaier gets a win over there. Pretty dominating win. So he's locked in. He's going to be able to defend his championship this year. So I know JRM is excited about that.
Yeah, he's got to defend that title. He's got
Yeah.
a lot to drive for this year.
Yeah, and this is why I think it was the last episode we were talking about Allgaier a little bit, and it's like this is why he stays right where he is. He's ultra competitive with Junior Motorsports. He's ultra competitive in that league. You know what I mean? In that
Yeah.
league, he's probably I know he's the longest tenured driver. Um, you know, and so basically I mean, it's a good fit. He wins championships. Why do anything else? He's stacking trophies. I mean, I would do the same thing. Now, if they get a cup car and he wants to go up like they did for the Daytona 500, of course he's going to do that, um, but focus first on this stuff and just keep winning championships.
Yeah, I wonder if he gets offers and turns them down. You know,
I
think he
wouldn't
gets an
doubt it.
offer from a
I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, anytime somebody wins a championship in Xfinity, it seems like they're offered a ride in Cup, right?
yeah,
So he's won several championships. He has to have been offered rides before, but just doesn't take them. Now, what will be interesting is, let's say, the fact is that Hendrick is pretty young right now. So like my thought process is if Hendrick had a seat available, would they get him, and would that work? Because Hendrick and Junior have a very big alliance through all of their racing, and so I wonder if they had a seat come up, if that would work out. But I don't see a seat coming available like in his kind of tenure, Um, trying to think
yeah.
of all the guys, but they're all, you got Elliott's got plenty of years, Larson's got plenty of years, Bowman's got plenty. Um,
They,
who's the
that's
other
it. They
guy?
only have three cars.
No. There's one more. Why can't I think of his name?
Oh, Byron.
William Byron. Yeah,
I knew we were missing
the
one.
guy that won. The one guy that won the 500. Whatever.
How could we forget?
Yeah. So those guys are all younger. You know what I mean? They
Yeah.
they all got time, and so I just don't think Justin Allgaier is going to be around long enough for that to happen. But if one of those guys was to get injured mid-season, that's a guy you might put in the car. So
That's
I don't
right.
know. But anyways, so good for him. He's going to be back at it in the playoffs, so that's cool. A little piece of news that's kind of interesting, developing all the back to Phoenix, is Catherine Legg. She started the race. I forget what team she was. It was some team that isn't there all the time. Don't even know how they got a charter. We'll move right past that. But so they were at Phoenix, and if you saw, she spun the car several times, most notably right in front of Daniel Suarez, who was running sixth. He plowed into her, took him out of the race. He had some colorful things to say afterwards. And since then, leading into press days at Las Vegas, Kyle Busch and Chase Elliott both voiced their concern with the pay to play that's going on right now. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh well, yeah. I guess the question around Catherine Legg for me is should they be allowing drivers out there, with inexperienced drivers onto the track? Pay to play, I guess. I mean, there are lots of drivers on the grid that you could argue are pay to play that are pretty good.
All right, you're being way too PC about this. Let me tell you. Here's the deal. Okay, first of all, pay to play sucks. Okay, and if you're not
Yeah,
familiar with the term, basically what it means is that if you got $1 million, you can just go race. They'll put you in, give them money, they'll put you in, get you a car, do it, right? I don't think it's right at all. And I think that the only reason that she was allowed this opportunity is because she's a she. I think NASCAR desperately wants some diversity. And I get it. I don't blame them for it, but you can't falsely manufacture it. You can't
right.
you can't make it so that you're giving opportunities to these people that are not talented enough to be there. I mean, this girl, she's raced in a lot of different things. I'm not saying she's not a good driver, but she's never done this before. Kyle Busch and Elliott both kind of said, basically, Elliott said, like, you got to be ready to do this. And she wasn't. And Kyle said something like, you got to come up through ARCA and trucks and Xfinity like everyone else did. And she didn't have to do that. She hasn't raced those things. And so it's like they have this licensing process, and you got to be a certain age and have this and that and this. You got to check the boxes to be able to go up in NASCAR ranks. And then you have somebody that comes in with money and just says, put me in the race. And they put him in the race. And I don't feel that that's right. Not only do I not feel it's right, I feel like NASCAR would never have done it if it was just me with, if I won the lottery and I'm like, hey, I bought a car. You know what I mean? Like, here's $1
Right.
million, let me on the track. They wouldn't let me do it. So I guess my question is, why would they let her do it? And why and it affects somebody's race that negatively, and
Yeah.
and then just not address it whatsoever.
Yeah. I'm with you on, you're doing the driver injustice, man or woman, if, you don't give them the support they need to succeed in the Cup Series. So if you promote a driver there, you should know that, as a team owner or a crew chief, you should know that your driver is ready to go, is ready to drive because this stuff's expensive and
Yeah,
whatnot. So yeah, to give Jennifer Legg this opportunity, I can see what you mean about them wanting to have a more diverse grid. It'd be great to see a woman in the Cup Series again. It's been a while since Danica has been on the grid, so I see what you mean there, and there's probably an element of that. But yeah, I agree. To me, the pay to play series is definitely Arca series.
yeah,
This
yeah, for sure.
uh, it seems like if you want to go, buy your way into one of these, premier stock car racing leagues, Arca series is for you.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly, and that's a good place to start. I mean,
right.
there's young kids starting. There's people that that have the money to buy the car, that don't have the experience to go out there and do it. You got the East Series, the West Series. You got, you know what I mean? It's like it's that's where you do that. You don't do that in Cup. Like, nobody wants to see Daniel Suarez, or anybody for that matter, get wiped out by somebody who shouldn't be there. As
Yeah.
it's just frustrating for them, and as a fan, or like anybody that that watches it, is like, what the heck, and why, like. And it wasn't just Daniel Suarez. I mean, she's spinning and causing cautions that would never have happened, and those things, like we see every week. It's like those things change races, and somebody's out there got a 5, 6, 7 second lead, And okay, now caution, now we got to re-rack, and now we got to worry about pit strategy and everything when we were about to go to the end of the segment, and so just it changes things, it
Yeah.
messes things up. It's just, I don't know, I didn't like it. I tend to agree with these guys that are talking out about it, but on the flip side of that coin, NASCAR is not as financially stable as they were a decade ago. And so, a little money in the pocket ain't so bad. So, you know,
Yeah, someone, a driver said you need about $3 million to go cup racing or something
something
in
like
there. Who
that.
said that?
Yeah.
Tony Stewart might
Tony
have said that.
Stewart said, well, he said $1 million, and that was also, what was
Uh,
that, 6 or 7 years ago? He said that
right.
shortly after he retired. I think he was like, all he needs $1 million, and you can drive Cup. And the guys who asked him the question was like, like what?
Yeah.
And it these things hadn't really come to light yet that guys were paying to get rides, and now it's starting to become more known. What's his name? Sheldon Creed, okay, in Xfinity. He said outright last year in an interview, post race interview, won the race. He said I'm finally actually gonna make some money this year. And
Right.
then asked to expound on that, basically he had to pay to be in the car. He had
Hmm.
it's not like, oh, I'm just drawing a salary. No, he had to pay to be in the car, and then he gets paid back based off of performance. So he's got to make his money back first. That's how some of this stuff works. And so that's where these guys are coming from. It's like, oh, you got $1 million, you can go. No, it's not just buying the car, it's not just buying the charter. Sometimes it's the driver paying, and that's what Tony was saying, and some of these guys is like, the driver puts up the money to put themselves there for branding, and
Right.
and now they become popular if they can do well, but they shouldn't be there. They didn't go through the channels to get there. They're cutting the line with money, and that's what people are like, okay, we don't like that. And that's one of my biggest issues, is I don't like that at all.
I,
um
I agree. I think a lot of the drivers, the younger drivers now who are getting in a cup, have the right combination. Not necessarily being the absolute best, but the combination of being the right place at the right time, being able to find or having sponsors to back them or financing.
yeah,
And yeah, and I think there is a level of talent and merit still to a degree because if you had two drivers who have, both are able to pay money into the team, you're going to pick the better one. So there is that
sure.
element at least.
Yeah,
Um,
and I mean, NASCAR does have some minimum standards. Obviously, Catherine had
very
raced
few.
before, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, but she's an open wheel driver, and so she has racing experience. I'm not saying she just came off the street, you know what I mean?
right.
But and that's their justification. But as we were just saying earlier with SVG, it's like there's a huge learning curve here.
Yeah,
And like you need to do that in another series where there's not as much money on the line. It's not watched by millions of people, on Sundays. It's not the premier series. That's, I
right.
don't know. That's just my,
Well, look at Castro Neves for the Daytona
yeah.
500.
Yeah.
What do you need to get and race Daytona 500? Well, you need probably some sort of NASCAR license, and then
Yeah.
you have to run the ARCA race if it's a super speedway, and you've never done it before, and then boom, you're in.
And then you just
So
do
I
it all
think,
weekend. You just, okay, I did my
yeah,
ARCA race. Now I'm going to do Xfinity. Now I did Xfinity. Now I'm going to do Cup. And what happened? He wrecked every single race.
right,
So the guy
yeah.
probably didn't make a dime. I
So
mean,
yeah, maybe we need some sort of license tier system within NASCAR that, kind of like the super license in Formula One,
yeah. Well, they
where,
do kind of
you,
have that. I mean, they have the thing where, to be able to super speedway race, you have to be 18. And then in order to be approved for this series, you have to have X, Y, and Z. But the problem is it's completely regulated by NASCAR, and NASCAR then arbitrarily can go around it and give exemptions. So then what's the
right,
point of it if they're just going to exempt anybody they want to?
right. Yeah,
I don't know.
that should be addressed because what that team did to leg driving out there at Phoenix, a very hard track,
Yeah.
was not fair to her. It's not fair to the competitors. Not fair to the team who worked hard to put that car together. It's just unfair all around.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Is it just that wasn't the track for it? Also,
Right.
if it was Vegas, maybe it would have been a little bit easier on her. She could have just ran out back, and nobody would have known she was there. But
Or Indy. She's got experience around there. She's an Indy
She's been
500.
there, yeah, many times,
Been there
right?
twice.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
would have been better, but I don't know. Anyways, uh, SRN Talladega
All
Wednesday
right.
night. Oh man,
Talladega was a
uh,
blast. I had so much fun.
Talladega is always fun, but there's always some drivers that are not happy at the end. And you can say all you want about, pre-race, like, hey, this is Dega, man. Things are gonna happen. Keep your cool. But it
Right.
don't matter, man. It's Talladega. It's hard racing. It's close racing. Constant hyper focus. You know what I mean? And things happen. It's just the type of racing, but people get upset, and it's not just on sim. It's in real life. I mean, every single driver in NASCAR hates super speedways.
Yeah.
We love to race them. You know, I was kind of I think I posted in our Discord. Like, hey, we might be just taking this race out because the amount of messages and protests and everything afterwards. It's like, I just, come on, like, if it's gonna upset people this much, let's just not do it. Well, then I got a whole bunch of messages like, hey, don't do that. So it's like we all love to do it, but then we all love to complain about it. So so I don't know what it
Oh
is,
man.
but maybe I just need to leave it on the schedule and then ignore all DMs and protests for 48 hours after. Like, make it like iRacing, where you have to wait a cooldown period before you can protest.
Right. Right. Yeah. I don't understand the getting upset at super speedways. To me, it's beer league night.
It
Who
is.
who cares what happens at
Yeah,
Talladega?
it's a
You
wild
know.
card. It's like I
And
could have a great finish, I could have a terrible finish, who knows, but I'm not going to get upset about it because it's just the breaks.
yeah, it's not gonna make or break my season anyway. But I love Talladega League racing. I would race super speedways every day in officials if it wasn't for safety rating.
Yeah, that's the problem with it, is it
Yeah.
absolutely destroys you, and then you can't go race the other things you want to. So
And then
that makes it tough.
it was so cool having our sponsor too. Um,
Yeah.
the Yeah, what was it? Live Rocks?
High voltage
High
dot
voltage. There
rocks.
we go.
Yeah.
There we
Yeah.
go. Yeah. Yeah, it was great to have those guys on board. Thanks for making that special and playing the music during the broadcast. I just thought it was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it filled the time good. I'm sure they enjoyed listening to it. It was good, and it was one of our most viewed broadcasts ever. I think we had over 250 views both on YouTube and Facebook.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just it. That's a ton. So
And you
and
had your hands full.
yeah, I was trying to do driver cams. I was trying to do everything, man. Hey, we were putting it out there, put it on the
That's
line,
right.
But it was fun, it was fun. It was a little stressful from the booth, like trying to do all these things without a production crew, but at the same time, it was a lot of fun. Just putting it on, playing the music. Gave you something to do during the cautions, so we didn't have to get too weird about it. Did a few interviews here and there. So I mean, yeah, it was good, man. It was a fun race. Um, I enjoy those. I just wish that people would just take it for what it is and just not get so upset about it. I mean, hey, people are going to lose control. There's a lot of guys that just don't have a ton of experience on super speedways and don't understand air at all. Like, they
Yeah.
don't understand why they peaked their truck out, and all of a sudden they got loose and doored the car outside of them. They just don't get it, and it's like it's it just comes with time.
Well, yeah, at SRN, we don't have we got a range of driver ability, driver experience. So it's all together on track, and especially at Talladega, you can tell who you're going to work with and who's maybe still trying to figure the track out. And yeah, just a range of experience in the league, and I think everybody is going to get over it. We can come back to Talladega next season, at least I
Yeah.
hope.
Yeah, I think so. I think it'll blow over. I mean, it was a flash in a pan, is what it was. You know what I mean? It was like everybody was pissed off. Everybody, and then it went just dark 30, nothing. So I'm sure everything's gonna be fine. So basically, you could see that Flex and Foothills were very strong. I will say that Mike Babinchek in his 55 car had his best night. Him and a couple other guys were running kind of the high voltage dot rocks. I think Scott Millard was one of them, and they were doing pretty good, man. They were working together, doing pretty good. So we saw a few teams that were really working well together, and trying to make it work, Um, but ultimately, only one can win.
Yeah,
And it always comes down to wildness. I think we used both of our green white checkers.
we did.
So which is kind of expected, I mean, it gets intense at the end. But so Stephen Shue gets the win for Team Foothills, and Dan Worthington gets second. Alex Healy gets third. Both of those two guys, second and third, are on flex. So those two teams definitely showed out.
Yeah, you can really see the teams working together on super speedways. It's kind of, I think it's the whole reason you form a team, is so you got that support on those drafting tracks or
Yeah.
catch a draft on, some of these long straightaways. So um, Foothills definitely controlled the front. I will say I tried to mix it up with them quite a bit,
Yeah.
but I didn't put enough gas in it for two green white checkers. So, I helped Stephen Shue get the win there. I think we might have missed it. I think you had the camera locked in on me, and then I ran out of gas, and we missed the finish there on
Yeah,
broadcast.
I
But
did. I was doing the call, and I was like, "What's going on with him right now?" Like, and what I really thought happened was, wait, okay, did iRacing throw the checker because of the wreck? I'm like, wait, we're already past
yeah,
white, right? And so I'm trying to process in my mind while announcing, and
right,
what is Rick doing right now, And
yeah.
it dawned on me afterwards. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever,
That was on the radio. I was like, I'm out of gas. I'm out of gas. High line.
Yeah.
I didn't want to cause a
And
pile up, but
I didn't have my ear in the radio. I usually have one ear in the radio so I can hear those kind of things and send it to
yeah,
broadcast. But I forget why, but I didn't have that on. So yeah, that sucked.
it's
But but other than that, it was a great race. It was a lot of fun. To give you kind of updates on points, so our point leader Bobby Hall, he finished ninth, and Chris Phillips is P2 in points, and he finished 10th. So he didn't make up any points. Actually, lost one there. But who is it? Alex Healy, who's also flex with Bobby Hall, he finished third, like I said. So he made up some points. He's our second place in points, so he made up some points on our leader, Bobby. So a little bit of movement there. I think maybe on the next broadcast, I'll put up a little graphic with the points for everybody to update. I think I did that like 3 weeks ago. Every couple of weeks, every few weeks, I put that up because there's not a whole lot of changes going on. But it's always good to see where we are long term, not just for that night. So,
where
um,
we headed next. I know we got Pocono coming up.
oh, let's see. I got that down at the
Got
bottom
Charlotte, then
here.
Pocono.
Charlotte and Pocono. So
Okay,
that's going to be fun. Charlotte's a fun track. I think that man, I don't know what to expect, but we'll get into that later in the show too, because we got what's coming up, and we'll kind of dissect that a little bit. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it from Talladega. We saw a few guys in the top 10 that weren't there very often. You know what I mean? And because of a super speedway, it's kind of that great equalizer. And so I know a lot of guys did have fun and got a good finish. Like I said, Babicek was one of those. Finished seventh. I think that's his best finish for the season, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but I think
that's
that's
great.
his best finish, his first top 10. So I know he's pretty stoked about that. I do have an interview from Stephen Shue, the winner. So let's play that real quick. And that 1 second. Steven, Matthew in the booth. You got me, bud?
All I can say is high voltage rocks.
Man, that was crazy. We talked to you earlier. You said, watch this. And then I was like, wait a minute. These guys are pitting again. What are they doing? What happened out there?
We was going to play the fuel strategy and go for the long game and,
Yeah.
blip in and just try to make it last. We was getting ready to dip in under green and, we knew everybody had to take gas, but we had it all figured out what, lap we could make it to as long as they wouldn't no green whites. And man, that didn't play out, but it did play out in my favor. I've got to give one heck of a shout out to Mr. Rick Baldwin.
Yeah.
You know, that man right there, me and him, we've raced side by side so much this season, and
Yeah,
I
and you
stepped
guys
up in
were you
front of
guys
him.
were
He was there.
together quite a bit there, especially at the end, and you kind of got separated from teammates. You found another teammate in him, and you know, it didn't work out for all of you guys, but hey, that's super speedway racing, you know what I mean? But great for Foothills to get in the winner's circle. Give us your sponsors, shout outs, whatever you want to do.
Definitely got to give a shout out to you all for putting on SRN. SRN's the league to be in. If you're going to be in the league, uh, definitely got to give a shout out to Natural Life Apothecary. That's your brand there. I'm not a user, but I've heard great things about it from some of the other teammates that's using it. Gall Real Estate for sponsoring the league also. Definitely High Voltage Rocks, because this race rocked tonight. And my personal sponsor, Jamie Wagner at Wagner's Welding. I told you I could put one on the podium for you. And definitely the teammates, you know, you got to give them a big shout out, because if it wasn't for us talking strategy and working together all race long, you know, falling off the pack, catching back up, you know, Jeff Leffler put me in a good situation. He pushed me hard early in the race. You know, he kept up with me there late and just got caught up in some stuff and tore his truck up. You know, definitely Chris, you know, Chris Barker, that is, he was over to my left during the beginning of the race, and we led several together up front for the beginning. Dr. Phil, you can't forget about Dr. Phil. That's Chris
Right.
Phillips. You
Yep.
know, the man, the myth, the legend. You know, he was there. He had some bad luck, but I think he wound up finishing 10th. And the newest teammate, we got Alex Foster. He's a new member to Foothills. He should be getting his paint next week. You know, he's going to start running our logo and running with us. He's a great guy, and big shout out to him. He stepped out of the car and helped spot for me there at the end with Jeffrey. So definitely my teammates, and surely last but definitely not least, the good-looking wife downstairs for letting a big guy be a big kid.
Yes, sir. All right, you got it, man. You're getting good at this. All right, so so congratulations, man. Great win. Put one on the board. I know Jamie will be happy about that, and the rest of you Foothill guys, you know, battling this season. So great win. We will see you next week. All right, so there you have it. That was the winner, Stephen Shue, in his interview post race. We also on Thursday had our GT3 series. Canadian Tire. That's a fun track. I like that track. I don't. Do you like that track? It's all right.
It's okay, but I had fun.
Yeah, I think it's one of the less technical, I would say. You know what I mean? So you don't feel like you have to be 100% locked in, I guess, is my thing. Is like it's more of a fun run than anything. You know, some of the tracks are super technical, and that one only has a couple of real technical corners. Other than that, you can just kind of drive. So it was a little bit more.
Yeah, it's one of those I want to take a stock car around.
Yeah, that would be fun actually.
Your typical North American circuit.
Yeah. But yeah, so it was a good race. I mean, obviously, you know, Dominic Ariata, he won the race. He's out front every single race we do. No shocker there. Unfortunately, I think Mike Hill missed. He's the one you've been battling with every single week. But Austin Longnecker did a good job taking his spot.
Yeah.
He did really good. He had a great run.
It's been both really fun racing in this series, but also very stressful and tiring, being so close to these drivers for the whole race.
Yeah.
I know probably hasn't been everybody's experience in the league, but turns out I'm lucky enough to have, you know, 3 or 4 drivers right there with my pace, so I'm learning a lot in this league. So it's been really good for me personally, but it's also been great to get to know, you know, Mike Hill and Austin Longnecker. They end up being, you know, really great people too. So I look forward to racing them more every week.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good group of guys. It's smaller, you know. We're looking for more drivers, but it is a good group of guys, and there is quite a few of them. You know, it's like Dominic's in his own class, and then there's like 3 or 4 guys that are pretty much the same and finish, you know, 3rd through 4th or 5th every week, and that's where the competition is. It's like the first car and say 6 through whatever is those are in two different classes, and this middle class is where all the competition is. And yeah, I mean, racing with each other every week, you're all just learning, a lot more about the cars and what to do, and it's just experience and seat time.
Right, and something I've never really experienced before. It's on a road course. I can pull up behind Mike Hill or Longnecker and know that I can trust them, for the whole race basically to keep it clean and
Yeah.
kind of predict. They're predictable, which is great for racing. Um, and yeah, it just makes for a really fun time, and everything matters. Even pulling into the pit road this season, it, missing a tenth or two there, and you end up coming out behind the car you're racing. So, I got something to clean up on pit road, but my competitors are really fast.
Yeah, it's something that I feel like in officials, a lot of times you don't have to pit, right? And in endurance racing, and maybe this is just us, but I haven't really thought a lot about being super competitive on and off. I'm more thinking about longevity, cold tires, take it easy on the first lap, getting in like, hey, don't slide, don't speed. You know what I mean? But it does really bring to light, okay, like over an endurance race, if we're gonna pit, let's say 6 times, um, if I'm losing 5 seconds, that's 30 seconds. Now, how many times have I
Right,
finished within 30 seconds of somebody? Like it's happened, And so it's like,
right.
wait a minute, maybe this is something we need to think about. And that's you can only get that when you're doing this weekly in a series like this.
Yeah, these are basically sprint races for us, and the the experience we're gaining here definitely applies when we go and do iRacing special events like 24-hour Spa or Daytona. Kind of thinking about all these small things that you know may seem like they're not that urgent, but they add up over time. So like getting in the pit road as fast as you can and as smooth as you can is super important. And
Yeah.
also, I'm starting to realize that perhaps um, fuel saving quite a bit to have less time on pit road. I know I had 2 seconds in pit road than 2 seconds longer in pit road than Austin Longnecker, and that cost me a position. So it's all these little tiny things that add up to make a fast race. Um, but that being said, Dominic is still 30 seconds up the road from me, so
Yeah.
there's
Yeah,
also much more to learn everywhere.
yeah, there's no getting around that. He's still
Right.
wicked fast, and so that's. But I mean, with seat time, and let's face it, if you look him up on iRacing, that's all he does. He doesn't do oval. He doesn't do dirt road. He doesn't do dirt oval. He literally only has progressed anything in sports car and open wheel. That's it. And so it's just the amount of seat time and whatnot is a lot higher. And so it's just experience, man. The other drivers will get there and try to get better. Obviously he's gonna, the more seat time they get, the more he's gonna have. But I would expect to see by the end of this season some guys really picking up speed, picking up time, and yeah, just getting better at the craft. And that's kind of the whole purpose of the series. So
Yeah. We had Nate Brooker there. Shout out to him. He's super competitive at Canadian Tire, but also went and ran Talladega with us and had an awesome
had a
race,
great
always
run.
up front.
Yeah.
So yeah, congrats to him for jumping in the NASCAR truck and performing in that car as well. So that was
Yep.
awesome to see.
Yeah. Well, okay, so NASCAR had the week off. We'll actually talk about the race coming up on the next podcast because it's going to be after that even. So, but we did have an IMSA, the 12-hour at Sebring. That was a fun race. That was interesting to say the least. Some things happened there that I didn't really think were going to happen. First and foremost, the GTP, when we talked about practice, it was the BMWs that were super fast in the sanctioned practice. And by the end of the long run, the 12 hours, though, it was Penske finishing 1-2 instead of BMW. And so they actually had a really good show out pickup from practice, if you would say. They must have learned a lot, went back to the shop and changed some things. But that just speaks to Penske's, winnings. They won it. They won at the Daytona 24. Now they're here at the Sebring 12, and they win again. So I mean, there's just no stopping Penske at this point.
Oh, I know. It's like the Florida 36 hours they won it. So Porsche really turned it around to end the race. So yeah, business as usual for them. But I think some of the more interesting races, at least in my opinion, were the GT3 cars, both the Pro and GT Daytona. Um, to see some of them, they seemed a little unstable, especially under braking, lots of off tracks and whatnot. So yeah, I had my eyes on the GT3 class for most of this.
Well, one thing I did notice that I think was affecting a lot of guys is I don't know what was with the compound, or maybe I just didn't see it at Daytona, but I seem to see a lot more marbles around the preferred line. And it seemed like if guys got off of it at all, it was just, I mean, either they had to get all the way out of it or it was just straight catastrophic.
Right.
But it seemed like it was more than that. I don't know if there's a difference, like, if that's more concrete and Daytona's more asphalt, and so that doesn't hurt it as much, or I don't really know that in depth to it. It just seemed like there was debris all over the track. Go 6 hours in past, and there was just it was just kind of muddied up, and so you couldn't get outside the line. You were kind of stuck where you were, and I think that obviously hurt some people.
Yeah, Sebring, the track surface compared to Daytona is totally different. And Daytona is more of a typical racetrack that's, manicured. It's taken care of, smoothed out, whereas Sebring is more bump and yeah, rough. It has this historic character to it that makes it, uh, you know, kind of fun to drive in a way, but also rough on tires, and
Yeah.
it has some character to it.
The
Is
the
what I'm trying to say.
GTD cars have a lot more suspension travel than say the GTP or LMPs, but you could really see in the GTPs, you could see exactly what you're talking about. Like they would come around like turn 1 and 2, and these cars are hopping like they're on hydraulics. I mean, it was
Right.
just wild. They're bouncing everywhere. That's got to be jarring in the seat, and a little bit, it's got to kind of lend to breaking the tires loose. So can't be a great feeling. But one thing that just dawned on me as well when talking about the GTPs bouncing is that Valkyrie looked wild. I don't care. That thing was sexy. Okay, first of
Yeah.
all, that 12 cylinder, it sounded awesome, right? But from the back, the wing and the fusers, it looks like the damn Batmobile from the 90s with Michael Keaton, man. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just Google it.
Yep. It does.
It's what it looks like. It looks like the old school Batmobile, and it's so freaking cool. But that thing, here's what's interesting about that car that I noticed that I didn't see on the other GTPs is it looked like its stance was a little higher, a little further off the track. And I just wonder if they were doing that for the bumps to get a little more suspension travel or what. But it seems like that may cost you speed, and they weren't super fast. They didn't do terrible, but they weren't super fast.
Yeah, they did much better in Sebring than their their peers over in Europe did for the WEC opener.
Yeah.
Rough weekend for them, so it was nice to see them do a little better um, here. But yeah, I think a lot of these cars are running a little higher because of the character of the track, the bumps in the road. It was built in an old, I think, a World War II runway, so
Yeah.
yeah, it's imperfect compared to Daytona and some of these European circuits. Um, but yeah, I noticed that too. The Valkyrie definitely looks like a, a historic, Le Mans car or something like that. So
Yeah, it's
I
really
love
cool
the
looking.
different.
I'm looking
Yeah,
forward to it being competitive, and that to be on camera more. They'll show it more. It'll be it'll get more play, and I think it's gonna be a fan favorite here shortly. I really do. Once it gets a little bit more notoriety, I think when guys are walking through the garage and stuff, they're gonna be like, hey, we got to go see that Valkyrie, man. And so, anyways, that was fun to see. But one thing that also stood out to me was we had a lot more cautions early in the race than I really thought we would. Usually in a 12-hour endurance race, the first 3 hours are just kind of like feel it out, settle it in, get your double stints done because those you want to get the double stint done early while you're still fresh. You know what I mean? And it just seemed like there was quite a few issues that you don't typically see in those longer endurance races.
yeah. Well, Sebring starts at 10 a.m. Eastern time and then goes
Local.
until, yeah, 10 p.m. Local time. So uh, it starts, maybe getting hot and slick, and then at the end, track cools off and the cars have more grip. I wonder if some of these teams hadn't, maybe leaned the car towards running better at the end of the race and had really bad handling, in those first few hours when you reach, 12 o'clock and the sun's straight overhead beating down on the track. And I really saw a lot of the cars, had ill handling.
Yeah.
Even the class leaders are, missing braking points or,
Yeah.
locking up under braking and spinning out. So I think there were a lot of ill handling race cars that caused a lot of those incidents.
Yeah, that's true. But they did, towards the middle of the race, then they had this point where at one point I heard the announcer saying that it was like 3.5 hours since they had a caution. And it's like, wow, okay, now they got it sorted out for sure, because that's a really long green flag run. I mean, that's these guys are having to pit under time, you know what I mean, and do driver changes. You don't get the luxury of a caution. So it was a lot more work for those guys. But I mean, for me personally, that's what I want to see. I don't like to see cautions. I don't want to see cautions at all. Um, to me, it was that was a much more entertaining stint for me as a viewer.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I do like it when they re-rack them and then the faster classes have to work their way back around through tight fields of GT cars. That's always fun to see, and that may have contributed to some of the cautions too. I saw some
Yeah.
of these faster classes running each other over, but also, GT cars that were in the way.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what it was right off the bat that a GTP car right off the start got turned. I forget who it was. And then, yeah, it's like all the GTDs and pro or not, got to go through them all. And it's like, not only did you lose the time
Yep.
from the spin, now you got to spend a minute and a half of time on track at least getting by these guys, and it's like, oh, that's insult to injury, man. So
Yeah.
that was pretty tough. But I mean, it was at the end of it, we talked about before Rexy in that 77, the AO racing car gets the GTD Pro win. I'm sure they're very happy about that. Ford did a good job, led some here and there with the 64, and I think 65 did most of the leading. But they're the top 5 cars, they did good. But AO is like one of those fan favorite teams, the Rexy painted car and whatnot. And so good to see them get a win. I know that's like I said, a fan favorite kind of deal there. And obviously, that puts them up in the points. And so I didn't get a chance to look at the points, and it's still very early in the season. So, I mean, it's not
It's pretty
that
early.
big yet. Yeah, but you got Ford's got to win, and now that Porsche for AO's got to win. So those two teams are looking.
So Rexy did not have as great of a run in Daytona as he did in Sebring, but
No.
the BMWs look strong at both tracks,
Yeah.
finishing up there. Yeah, the Mustangs too coming in strong. I think they had that top 5 finish too. So it's good to see Ford um, doing well, of
I think
course.
they're going to be really competitive this year. I mean, we were
Oh
only
yeah,
2 races in, but they go first and third in the first one, and I think they were like, I want to say like 4th and 6th in this one. Don't quote me on that, but they were up there. You know what I mean? And
right.
so it's like the Multimatic has got that car figured out now in season 2, and I think they're going to be competitive. I think they're only going to get better as this season goes. The more time they spend on track with this team, the better that they're going to get. And I think that sky's the limit. I mean, they could absolutely. It's obviously way too early, but they can absolutely have aspirations of championship.
Yeah, Ford is serious about racing, so it's nice to have their support in IMSA. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how their season plays out.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was a good race. Now they have a while. If you're not familiar with the series, IMSA only races like once a month. So they have a while, and then but now we're going sprint racing, right? I mean, this is only a 100-minute race at Long Beach.
Oh yeah.
Long Beach, if you're not familiar with that track, there's a couple corners there can really be calamity. I mean, it can be bad. Specifically, the last corner. That is, I mean, basically 180 degrees. It's a huge tight corner that is hard to make, and I mean, I can't imagine you go side by side, but somebody in a GTP is probably going to try it, and that's going to be difficult. And then I think it's turn 2 and 3 where you come around the right hand carousel back to the left. that one can be kind of treacherous as well. So that'll be fun to watch, but that's going to be next month. We'll cover that, like leading into that later. Let's see, what else do we have coming up? So NASCAR is going to Homestead. So now we're going to do the 1 mile track, right? We got to get every single track that we do in right out front.
Yeah.
You know, what do you expect out of Homestead?
So Homestead's one of those ringing around the wall sorts of tracks. We haven't really been anywhere like that yet. So I expect the usual suspects up front there. So Tyler Reddick, Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson always amazes me, getting so close to the wall.
Kyle
He's
Larson's willing to
probably
rub
the
the paint
bravest
off
out there.
every lap.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild.
So,
That's his dirt tracking stuff, you know. I mean, he's used to that.
Yeah, so he's always incredible to watch at tracks like these. So I look to see him win this next race.
You got him for the dub?
Yeah,
You're
I
gonna
think
pick
so.
him, Kyle Larson?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I mean that would be good because he's my pick for the championship, so I need to get him locked in early, you know.
Right.
You know, aside from him, you know, I don't think you can go wrong with Penske. I know, you know, I think even though this may not be Logano's bread and butter, you know what I mean, this kind of high and wide kind of thing, that may not be best for him, but I think Blaney might be able to show us something there. And so I'm looking for Blaney. I feel like he needs to get a win. He's been super competitive. I just feel like it's sooner or later here it's going to be his time, so why not take him at Homestead? But
Yeah,
but you ain't wrong about
luck.
Tyler Reddick either. But
Right.
something about him, just he always finds a way to get into some trouble. So I don't know. I don't know if I could pick him.
That's the thing about both Reddick and Larson. You know, they're so good at riding it so close to the wall, but they're going to hit that wall at least twice during the race.
Right, and the matter is how hard and does it come off quickly, right? I mean,
Right.
that's what matters. If it comes off quickly and they don't hit too hard, then they're going to be fine. They're going to keep going. But sometimes those cars will get stuck on the wall because it grabs the tire, you know, and that'll ruin their day. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there and who comes out on top. The SRN series is going to be going to Charlotte, which is an interesting track. We have another sponsor that's going to be on for the next 2 races, but that's going to be the VFW Post 1536 out of Sayre, Pennsylvania. So they're going to be sponsoring a race, which is cool. Happy to have them on board.
Awesome.
What do you expect out of the Charlotte race there in SRN?
Ooh, Charlotte's going to be good time. I expect a lot like Texas, but Charlotte seems to be a little narrower, at least the racing line. So I expect to to have maybe a few more incidents on the front stretch.
Yeah.
But also I think compared to Texas, we might have some other grooves working for us. So we might be able to run that middle line through all the corners. Hopefully that helps us make some passes.
Yeah, Charlotte definitely is a 2 groove track. You can definitely work that high side in. The issue, I agree with you, is going to be in the D. You know, on that what they call the tri-oval type thing. You know, there's 2 kinks in that front stretch, and when you go in side by side, if you're not familiar with it and you don't start turning early, you're going to float to the outside. And if you're the inside car, that means you're going to hit the car on the outside. And if you're the outside car, that means you're going to hit the wall. And so those things, it's going to happen a couple times, I guarantee you, because it's just one of those that you can know about it, you can think about it going into the race, this is my strategy, and then halfway through, you know, whatever it is, I'm thinking about, hey, I got to pit in a few laps, you know, I'm trying to set my buttons up, and then I get just behind on my steering for a second, and boom, it's over. It happens, you know, and it happened to me the first couple of times I raced that track, and so I would expect that to happen. Other than that, I would expect our usual suspects up front. You know, I don't think this track is going to throw anybody a curveball. I think we're going to see, Chris Phillips, Chris Barker. We're going to see Alex Healy, Bobby Hall. You know, those guys are going to do really well. And then I think there might be a couple of guys that surprise us. You know, not really sure who, because every week that's a little bit different. But there's always, you know, 1 or 2 that sneak into the top 10 there that you're like, hey, good job. You know.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think it'll be, back to business at Roughneck after Talladega. Not Roughneck, excuse me, SRN.
Yeah. Yeah, and then Thursday in the GT3 series, I believe, is Monza. I didn't write that down, but I'm almost positive that. That's a fun track. I always enjoy that track. Lots of straightaways, so there's a few corners
Yeah.
that are really like important that you hit before those straightaways, so that you know have good momentum. Otherwise, you're just going to get passed. So and then the car behind somebody, you kind of want to push them into those corners so they overdrive it a little bit. So there's a little strategy play, and so I find it pretty interesting. And then most of the corners are pretty hard corners, so you can be a little bit more aggressive than other guys, and you're not going to kill the tires because you're not constantly in corners.
Right. I hope my Mustang's fast there. I depend on that straight line speed, to beat these
Yeah,
McLarens that I have
right.
to race with every single week.
Exactly. So, that might be the equalizer, though. That might be it,
I
because
hope
those
so.
McLarens are really good at like the what do you call that? The longer arcing corner speed.
Yeah,
Like when you
sweeping
get
corners.
down to like the hard, high braking corners, it kind of equalizes, and then the straightaway speed has got to be advantage Mustang. So you got
I
to
hope
figure
so.
it's got to be a little bit more competitive there.
Hmm.
So we'll see.
Yeah, I just,
We'll see.
yep.
Oh. All right. You got any final thoughts?
No, I'm looking forward to an exciting week of racing,
Yeah.
both in the sim and in real life. So
Yeah. A lot of racing going on this
looking forward.
week. So watch all the racing. Like I said, SRN will be on Wednesday night and Thursday night, 6:30 Central, 7:30 Eastern. So tune in on YouTube to SRN to see that. And that's all I got. We'll be back next week.
See you guys. Thank
See
you.
ya.